On today's episode of Watch Jericho, we're back in the garage and we're going to try to figure out just how messed up my new RX-7 is. It's an RX-8, isn't it? What is going on, guys? I am Watch Jericho, and like I said, today we're back with the RX-8 and we're going to try to figure out exactly why it won't idle. Now, it runs pretty well. It drove around great. I had a lot of fun with it. It seems like, it starts reliably. It does everything else the way it's supposed to. Of course, it's throwing a check engine light, so we're gonna jump in, we're gonna scan that. We're gonna look for vacuum leaks. There's a lot of things to check on an RX-8, and they're pretty much the same for no matter what your problem is. The issues are usually it won't start, it won't idle, and it dies when you come off throttle, stuff like that. There's like three main issues with the RX-8, and it's the same checklist over and over and over. It's replace your coils, replace the wires, replace the spark plugs, check compression, make sure there's no vacuum leaks, and clean the math. And check the O2 sensors. I think that's the entire list of RX-8 problems. And obviously check the oil, make sure there's oil in the thing, and take care of the oil. I saw that comment so many times in the last video, and yes, I'm aware that RX-8s destroy oil and destroy fuel for fun. Not even RX-8s, just 13Bs, Rotaries in general. That's just what they do. So that's the checklist. Let's pull this thing in here and see what's going on with it. Now, I don't have a rotary compression tester. They are special. They're digital and they compensate for barometric pressure and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I don't have that tool. They're like 350 bucks, or you can try to borrow one, or you can try to get a factory one. They're like 500. We're gonna try to troubleshoot everything else before we go after a compression test. I'm just hoping the engine, the seals, all that good stuff, I hope they're good. And also, people were very concerned about the Hot Wheels. I said I was gonna throw them away. They're nasty, and I wouldn't touch them with my bare hands, that's for sure, but I didn't throw them away, even though I probably should. Also, if you've ever wanted an RX-8 or you want to experience what owning an RX-8's like, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot more RX-8 content coming, at least up until we either fix it or we can't fix it. So either way, I'm gonna let you guys know. Starts right up. Oh, the idle is absolutely horrible. Let's try to figure out why. It also smells like a lot of fuel. We'll start by scanning this thing with my Carly. I'll throw a link in the description below to this thing if you want to buy one for yourself. It does work really well. Oh boy. So far, 37% of the car has been checked. 11 issues found. 12 issues. This thing is flying. We're at 60% now. It might have some problems. Diagnostics completed. Okay, bad. 14 issues. There you go. If you buy an RX-8, bad. The only thing that actually matters to me here is powertrain, so we're going to the PCM. We've got P0076, intake valve control circuit low, intake manifold tuning valve control circuit low. So that's interesting. It seems like the same part, maybe disconnected. Those ones are be careful. And then secondary air injection system low, neutral switch circuit malfunction, charging system voltage high. That one's interesting. The weird one though is that neutral switch circuit. Somebody said that can cause a bad idle. Let me start this thing again. It does idle down when the clutch is pressed. That's interesting. It's tough to do any diag on that neutral safety switch. You probably need real-time data to actually see what's going on with that. Interesting. Other than one more code, a P1800 for transmission clutch interlock safety switch, every other code on this thing is a CAN bus failure. And also there's some low battery warnings, which I think it all comes from the battery issue where I think I hit a bump and it disconnected the battery for a second while we were driving it. I don't think there's a battery hold down. So that's honestly a pretty easy to solve problem right there. We just fix the battery, retighten all the connections, and clear the codes. All right, luckily the RX-8 forums are also extremely helpful. I just clicked the link right out of Carly. It searched Google for the code P0067, if I remember right, and it said swap the air solenoid with the VDI solenoid and check all the connections there, and they're also commonly corroded. So we're gonna do a little swaparoo, see what happens there. At first we gotta find those solenoids, so let's just jump in here. Okay, today's the day I learned everything about RX-8. So I immediately found what's likely a big problem. This is one of the actuators, and it might be that variable intake actuator. I don't know if this is the VDI or SSR or SSV. There are a ton of vacuum actuators that make this thing work, and one of them changes the intake length by closing this big barrel. One of them has like 2 holes in the barrel and changes another runner. There's a whole bunch of different vacuum actuated stuff like I was saying, but this one here definitely comes from one of the solenoids, and let's see. It moves freely now, but a second ago, that connector right there, that electrical connector was jammed underneath it, which made me think that might have been an issue. And then, I'm assuming this guy here is another one of the actuators. All of those actuators are hiding way back here on the top of the upper intake manifold. So there's this plastic intake manifold that connects to the real intake manifold that goes into the side of the engine, throttle body, air intake, all that good stuff right there. And all the solenoids are, you can actually kind of see them. That blue connector, you can see just a hint of blue back there. And that is the solenoids, there's 3 of them. And I bet the solenoids are working, and if I had to guess, that hose with the screw in it is the actual problem. Now, for some reason there's a block off plate on whatever this is that likely comes from the intake or the exhaust. Not sure what's going on with that. I actually found the AC compressor. It's actually in there. It's way down there. You can see the pulley right there and the clutch sticking out of the front of it. There it is. Now you guys can see it too. There's an idler right there. And then we've got this pressure transducer there. No idea what that's for, but of course it's just sitting there. Not sure what that was either. It's missing whatever was hooked up there. They said that's where the AC compressor was. It definitely is not. And man, the intake's a mess. Everything is just a mess in this engine bay. We've got another block off right there where they just used a screw right into the intake. The intake is of course cracked a little bit, probably a vacuum leak, so that's probably contributing to some issues. The MAF probably needs cleaned based on what's going on with the MAF screen right there. It looks horrible. Of course, there's no filter. And also the VFAD still exists on this car. It's commonly deleted, and I'd like to delete that. That is that hose, that solenoid there, and also all of this junk here. This is all going to the VFAD, and who knows if this one-way, the check valve there, is even in there correctly. So you can actually just delete all of that if you don't want the variable air duct, and you can just put a cap right there on the back of the upper intake manifold. It's that hose right there. You can see it running into the manifold. That hose goes from the back of the manifold all the way through all of this. There's a vacuum chamber back there, and that runs all the way up here under the front bumper cover, and there's just a vacuum actuated flap that changes the air duct a little bit. So a lot of people delete that, and we'll probably delete that too, just to simplify things as we keep working on this. Ooh, that might explain something, or a lot. Why is there no brake reservoir sensor? It's all just cut out. I don't even see where those wires used to go. There's no other end to the wires. Everything in here is pretty nasty. It looks like this was parked in a field and might have had rats in it, and that could have caused some of this damage. You can see all the insulation is picked apart here. A couple seconds later, we figured out what all this nonsense is, and also this goes to the air pump. It was a big motor that was sitting here. And of course, this vacuum line opens and closes the valve to the air, which air, if you don't know, is the system where it draws fresh air into the exhaust to heat the catalyst up faster, the catalytic converter. So this is already blocked off, just like I normally do on old V8s that have air. This hose could be capped better, and we'll probably do that. And I'm gonna assume that since it uses a big 12-volt pump as well, that's probably the power that feeds that. So it's not throwing any codes about that. We need to keep troubleshooting, and I think our troubleshooting needs to start right there, which should be the VDI, the variable displacement intake, if I had to guess at the acronym. There's one other important thing we need to do. It's pull the MAF out of here and try to clean it. So mine just had 2 Phillips screws on it. That seems wrong. The Phillips screws were stripped out too a little bit. It seems like they should have been security Torx or Torx, because they typically are. I am gonna spray this out and see if we can, clean it up, and maybe it'll work better after that. So the element that we actually have to clean out is way up in here. Air temp sensor right there. And I mean, it doesn't look bad, but you really can't tell by looking most of the time. So we'll just give it a squirt with the CRC MAF cleaner and go from there. Once you see a MAF screen that's that dirty, you know you need to be worrying about it a little bit. That was pretty terrible what we saw in the air cleaner there. Just sprayed off the MAF with our CRC MAF cleaner, hit the air temp sensor and hit the MAF itself inside. You know, you may not be supposed to hit these ones like that. Usually it's for the exposed wire style, but you know, I just give it a squirt, fling it out real quick, and it should be good to go. And then obviously I let it sit like this to drain, even though that stuff evaporates in about 3 seconds. So while that is drying a little bit more, we're gonna jump on the scooter and head to O'Reilly's and pick up a vacuum cap assortment so we can cap off the VFAD and pull all of that out of there as well. This is one severely deleted RX-8, no air, no VFAD. It needs a catch can. They say you should have a catch can hooked up there, and I agree. The crankcase needs to be able to breathe. When I pulled up on the oil dipstick, there was actually a puff of air because there was so much pressure left in the crankcase. So that's got me wondering if there's you know, some kind of crankcase ventilation that is blocked off that shouldn't be on this car. Just problem after problem created by people that had no idea how to work on this car. Unfortunately, they didn't even take the time to read. I'm telling you guys, YouTube this video, and there's another troubleshooting video to show you how to check the vacuum actuators. And honestly, just reading for like 20 minutes and you'll know basically everything you need to know about a Rotary. The one thing I don't want to do is rebuild the engine. So if it goes that far, I'm probably gonna quit. But if we get it solved by just fixing all the vacuum issues, hose routing, cleaning up everything that they messed up, we should be good to go. It's so nice to be back on good roads, as long as I don't crash the scooter, and this close to O'Reilly's. We'll be there in 2 seconds. We're gonna grab a Mighty Vac and those vacuum caps, do some testing. Back to the old O'Reilly's. Mission accomplished. We got a Mighty Vac and some vacuum caps. Let's get back to the house and do a little troubleshooting on this RX-8. Time to rip it. All right, here's the rest of the VFAD delete. As we all know, unmetered air going into an engine is very bad. So you've got this little nipple sticking down on the bottom of the upper intake manifold. And there we go. The cap is on. Push it all the way on so that thing should never come off. And now you can see that brand new rubber cap sitting right there at the very bottom. And that is actually all you need to do. You don't have to mess with any of this. Obviously, I'm gonna get rid of all of it. We're also going to unplug the solenoid that goes to that thing. It's very unnecessary, and I think they even gave you, look at that. They gave you a blank spot to put that connector. So you don't actually, everyone says you need to put it somewhere, but if you have the stock air box, you can just put it right there. It has an empty tab, just a dead connector there for you to plug that into, which is very cool. And then the solenoid, all these hoses, you can just get rid of them all. They do nothing at this point. With the air box off, we can see the vacuum canister we're deleting, the solenoid we're deleting, and also we can see all this oil that's chilling in the intake. It doesn't look outrageous, but yep, that's quite a bit of oil. This seems to be pretty common in RX-8s as well. Lots of oil in intake issues. I do wish this car had a catch can. I think that would help. There we go. In the lower air box, go ahead and just rip this out of there after you pull out the screws. And that is your VFAD delete, the variable fresh air duct. So now it's a single fresh air duct. It's no longer variable, it's a mono, an MFAD. That's what we've got right here. This is, of course, a cold air intake technically because it draws the air directly from the lower part of the front bumper here. So, you know, you don't really need to replace these according to the forums. They work just fine, and obviously we all know that cold air intakes are usually a downgrade. Random oil bottle cap. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this out of here, clean it up, and try to make it work with a filter because obviously it would be good to have a filter. And now with half the engine bay torn apart, we can see these aftermarket coils that are in here. We have 2 aftermarket wires and 2 like factory wires sitting there. That's kind of a pile of nonsense, but you know what? I do think the coils and all the ignition system are working. The throttle body looks nice and dry, which is good. There's no oil sitting in there. Yeah, I know you shouldn't do this, but nope, it looks fine inside too. No oil sitting under the blade. And I pulled the intake accordion off as well, and obviously it had that bolt sitting in there to try to stop a vacuum leak. I don't think that's gonna seal that well, so we are gonna put something in there to go ahead and seal that off. Mazda needed $140 to replace that little piece of flexible rubber, and it wouldn't be here until Thursday. So we're gonna try to fix it without having to replace that nonsense. Knocking out problem after problem after problem on this car. I finally got out the old vacuum elbow off the top of this thing, and now I've replaced it with a brand new nipple from O'Reilly's that actually fits. That had to be pulled out with an extractor, and then we've got a vacuum cap on it in case I ever want to go back with a catch can, because I do think that would be a good idea since I saw some oil sitting in this thing. Catch can for the win, and now it'll be easy to connect if I need to. And it is very well sealed, I can tell you that. This vacuum nipple will not come out. It's serrated, and it's very stuck in there. So we've solved that problem, and also there's a crack in the accordion, and of course, like I said, it's $140. So instead of replacing the whole thing, the crack is very short. $6 of weather strip adhesive from O'Reilly's, and I'm just going to take a stick and slather the weather strip adhesive up in there until it bonds and creates a good seal so we don't have any vacuum leak there. And that hopefully solves all of our vacuum leaks. Then we got to chase down the VDI. So I bought a Mighty Vac so we can test the VDI, all the solenoids out. You could also do some solenoid swapping, which is good. The air solenoid is the blue connector that's on top. So we'll probably swap the air solenoid and all of its hoses over to the VDI, and hopefully that solves another problem. I'm gonna knock some of this out and I'll be right back with you guys. Hopefully we can put it back together, start it up here in a few, and see if it runs right. There we go, that is as repaired as it's gonna get. There's no light that passes through this thing, so it will not leak past the clamp anymore. We should be good. Now we're testing the SSV with the Mighty Vac. You can see I've got it hooked up right here. Brand new Mighty Vac just opened up, and if we give it 3 squeezes, the vacuum bottoms it out. So we know the vacuum diaphragm's good. We'll go ahead and hook this guy back up. Well, I needed to get to those 2 solenoids, or 3 solenoids, so here we go. The whole upper intake manifold's coming off. All the bolts are out. There's 1 there, 3 there. The one in the back's very hard, and 2 more down here. So that's how you get the upper intake manifold off of this thing. And I need to get in there and wiggle a little bit more, and I should have it out. At this point, I've done a ton of work. We've got a lot of the engine apart. I figured I'd give you a quick update on where we're at. Obviously, we found a lot of issues with just the accordion by itself, so I fixed the little gash in that was starting to open up with some weather strip adhesive, because for now we just need to get this thing sealed and try to resolve any vacuum leaks it might have. Obviously the air box was destroyed, so I've tried to fix most of that because we need obviously a good seal between the MAF and the engine itself. If you have unmetered air going into the engine, it can cause massive issues. I mean, it's just a huge vacuum leak. The seals look okay on the upper intake manifold, which is now off the engine too. A lot of work, I know, but I can't get new seals. I have tried. They're also at least 2 to 3 days out, just like replacing the accordion would be, and honestly, it's putting way too much money into this car. If it's more than about $300 total to fix, we have to stop because the car honestly isn't worth it. I won't be able to sell it for more, especially if we don't get the idle straightened out, so there's a point where you do have to stop. That point's at about a couple $100, like I said. So obviously I'm trying to fix everything I can without spending any money on the car, which should be simple because, you know, we're just using a bunch of vacuum caps and deleting things, cleaning things up. The air filter's about 30 bucks, but we haven't even bought that yet. For now, I'm just gonna clean out the MAF screens and hopefully that solves our problem temporarily. And if it does start running right, we'll throw a filter in it too. We have already deleted the VFAD, the SSV checked out, and also now we know the VDI checks out as well. If you watch this right here, you can see me run the Mighty Vac and you can see the VDI close. And when I release it, boom. So at 10 inches of mercury, it's completely closed and it's completely open. Hoses and diaphragms have checked out perfectly. We do need to swap the solenoids, which is the main problem we got in here to start fixing. So we will do that. I'll move the air solenoid down 1 and I'll move the VDI up 1, and we'll move all the hoses as well, and that should solve another issue for us. So that's just swapping 2 connectors around. It should be no issue at all, and we'll hook it all back up and see what happens. I'm gonna clean everything really well to try to make sure those intake gaskets seal, even though they are a bit old. I can't get replacements in any reasonable amount of time, so we're gonna put it all back together, and I do have new plugs and wires coming. I had to do that, honestly. The plugs looked nasty. It also looks like they never changed 2 of them, like they could only get to 2 of them, so then they just gave up after that. There's 4 different plugs that are incredibly expensive for this engine. It's $152 for plugs and wires. That's basically the whole budget right there. But everyone says that's where you start. So I am going to go ahead and put plugs and wires on it. Those are on their way from the O'Reilly's hub right now. And we're gonna get rid of those giant aftermarket wires and put a fresh set of wires on every coil. Some of them look pretty cracked out too. So this is an insane, complete tune-up just all at once. Fixing all the vacuum leaks, fixing the plugs and wires, plugging everything that needed to be removed, and hopefully after this, we're good to go. So there's the complete update on where I'm at right now. I'm gonna jump back in here and keep grinding, and we'll start putting this thing back together shortly. Spark plug wires and rotary plugs. If I didn't mention it, these are very expensive. They are custom laser iridiums only for the RX-8, and they are labeled if you have to buy spark plugs for this thing. Look at the bottom of that thing. Anyway, the leading edge ones say L, and the trailing ones say T on them. So RE7C, L, and T. With the other ones, RE9B. But yeah, those are the spark plugs for your RX-8. I'm gonna get busy changing them. It's quite the job because you really got to get down in there. I just got the first spark plug out. It is one of the front leading, and honestly, it looks really good. There's no carbon buildup or anything like that. It's just a nice brown color. Electrode looks nice. Not bad at all. Plugs and wires are finally done. It's time to start putting everything back together and just flipping the one solenoid that was the original problem, throwing the check engine light. Also, if you're doing plugs and wires, you're gonna need this bad boy. That is what it takes to comfortably do them. You pull the wheel and then you sit outside of the car to get them done. Before I finish putting the RX-8 back together, I wanted to do a couple quick tests to make sure the solenoids were good on the RX-8, and I've got 3 of them. These 3 are all the same. I was telling you guys you can swap all of them to test things out. They are exactly the same. You can do whatever you want with them. One's air, one's SSV, and one is VDI. I think it's VDI. Honestly, it's super hard to confuse VDI with variable displacement intake or whatever it is, and virtual desktop. So I keep messing that up in my head and forgetting what I'm working on, but here's my test for the solenoids. I've got a Milwaukee battery with some wires coming out of it, hooked up to the solenoid, and no clicky. And that is a bad sign. And then, no clicky. And I was thinking, I must have messed something up, or I don't have continuity, or my wires aren't hooked up to my battery. And then I checked it with my multimeter, the one that came out of the back of the RX-8, and it was fine. I've got 12 volts. And then, nice clicks out of this solenoid. Also, you can hear it do everything it's supposed to do. It switches which port the air is coming out of to the silenced one on the back. I've got 2 dead solenoids, which would explain why we had a check engine light. And this one is good to go. I could swap this one in and we'd be fine, but I need 2 working ones for the intake. The air one, who cares? But I still need 2 working ones to make this magic happen. We are fully stuck until I can get 1 replacement solenoid for this car. So that's how you test them. Also, if you take your Mighty Vac and hook it up to the side that runs into the upper intake manifold there, you should be able to pull a vacuum here and not here. All 3 solenoids sealed properly, but unfortunately, they are not working. I am gonna try to hit them with a hammer real quick. Not this one, of course. I'll put that one aside, or just hit them on the floor and see if they'll start working. Sometimes you can get them to free up, but honestly, I think we're just completely out of luck. So there you have it. That's working on an RX-8 for an entire day. I thought I would have it knocked out by the end of the day. I was excited. We were making good progress, fixing problem after problem, and boom, we hit the ultimate roadblock, more failed parts. That is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to head on over to shop.watchjrgo.com for cool shirts, not like this, and please like, share, subscribe, do whatever you want to do, and I will talk to you next time. Subscribe for the Dorito-powered ending of this series. Hopefully, fixing that solenoid makes this thing idle. Everything else is pretty much swapped out. The only thing that I really do need is the pulley. There was a plastic pulley that went on that bearing there. That bearing's trash too. I think that seized up and threw the AC belt off, and that's why it doesn't have AC. Of course, this was a hub-only part that I couldn't get today either. So we'll see if we can get one of these plastic pulleys in that belt in before it all goes back together. It sure would be easy to do.